we are really excited about tonight's topic. As you know, in my last post, I mentioned that actually it's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month and it's also Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And we didn't want this time to go by without us actually having a discussion around this and how this is affecting our community. So I've invited two guests to come on with us this evening. One is Sarah Grant, who sort of focuses on chronic illness and disease, and we also have Dr. Prajakta Chowdhury, who is a general physician, who will be just offering not some advice or medical advice, but really just engaging in really the science of how cancer affects our communities. And so we'll be looking at things like metastasis, so how cancer spreads, or the etiology, where does it come from, and also looking at a couple of stats, hopefully, and some of the barriers that we face, some of the conversations that we're having or not having in our communities about this, and just see if we can cultivate some important dialogue around this. So I'm just waiting for Prajakta to join now. So hopefully she can join us soon. Apparently there's a new feature on IG Live now as well, where you can add more than one person to have a conversation, which is quite new to me. So we're going to see how that goes. Earlier on in the week, we actually posted some information, first about sort of looking at myths and sort of misconceptions around cancer, and we'd like to discuss some of those this evening. We also looked at sort of prostate cancer separate to ovarian cancer as well, and how that can affect various people, regardless of how they identify. And sometimes it comes across as being something that we understand really well, but we know that there's often lots of changes in information, and also information changes. Sometimes we can have to make some adjustments in the way that we're thinking as well. I think I see Prajakta joining now. So hi Prajakta, there you go. I was just rambling a bit to see if I could buy a bit of time. So I'm just going to wait on Sarah to join, but in the meantime, if you wanted to introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then hopefully by that time Sarah will have joined and she can introduce herself as well. Over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, you're very faint. I can only hear you a tiny bit.
Oh, okay. Now?
Oh, that's my volume. Okay, I'll turn my volume up now. We're good to go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Prajakta. I'm a doctor and I'm currently doing my master's in public health in the University of Chester, and here working at BDH as a volunteer clinical health information lead, long title. And I'm passionate about, addressing misinformation, advocating for more doctor-patient communication, and minority rights. So.
Okay, amazing. And right on time to introduce ourselves, we have Sarah Grant joining us. Okay, Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm starting with pronouns, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Grant. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm glad to be joining the conversation today. I am one of the Health Education and Resource Development Officers for Black Beta Health, specifically in the chronic illness department, and I'm glad to be here to talk about if you have it, screen it.
Absolutely. I'm just taking in how impressed I feel about this new format. I've actually never seen this group format on IG, so I'm just taking the time to appreciate that. My name is Harvey. My pronouns are he, him, and I'll be focusing more on sort of prostate cancer tonight, as that's the area that I've prepared. But I am a public health practitioner as well, and I enjoy science, I enjoy health, and hopefully we can have some meaningful dialogue tonight. So, yes. So I just wanted to give a tiny bit of what we're calling Beetlejuice, okay? Obviously we're Black Beetle Health, so giving a bit of Beetlejuice, which is basically the goss, what's been happening with us. And this past week, we were really lucky to launch our new Chronic Illnesses and Conditions Health Guide, which there's been loads of work that's gone into that to ensure that it is safe, it's sensitive, it's inclusive, and it has all the right language in it. Because a lot of times, we don't see the right language, we don't see the right images, we're not seeing ourselves in a lot of this work. And I've actually just seen an old friend of mine, Rachel Baker, just join. I remember the day when we found out about Rachel's own situation, and how hard that hit our wider community, and how amazingly Rachel has done in bouncing back, and I think that's just amazing just to see your face there. I haven't seen you for ages. Hey, family! She say, hey, family. And I hate to, sort of put that out there, but it was really, Rachel is such a sweet person and has impacted so many people's lives. And, it was heartbreaking when we found out about that, but I'm so glad that Rachel's doing fine now. So I just wanted to give a bit of goss and just say, she's like, yes, correct. Thanks for the support. Oh, Rachel. So, we had a new guide that came out. Obviously, we had the mental health guide that came out previously, a couple of months ago, and of course, the sexual health guide before that. And we now have the health guide that's on its way. So I just want to put a bit of that out there as well. We are just on the verge of starting an academic study as well, which I'm quite excited about. So we'll be learning more about that information at a later time. But we just want to start having those conversations around that so that people are aware that that is on. And of course, working on a couple of other projects that we'll be finding out through our social media channels. But as far as tonight, I really want to sort of just double back around to these two complex words that we saw maybe on social media this past week, one of which is etiology and the other one of which is metastasis. And so I just want to hand across to you, Projector, and give you a chance to sort of really introduce cancer again, and just talk a bit about sort of the origins and sort of how things can spread as well.
So I'm going to talk about cancer. A lot of people don't take it seriously, especially.
Your volume is a bit low, Projector, so if you could speak up, I don't know if it's, I thought it was my phone at first, but yeah, maybe just speak loud. I think that.
Okay. So cancer is usually overlooked by everyone because the repercussions usually show up late, and usually like other chronic diseases and the ones that have more like immediate symptoms are more like sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm a little nervous. So so cancer is basically like a group of conditions that can occur in any individual because it is caused by our own body cells. So our body cells have DNA, which essentially codes for what the function of the cell is going to be. And cancer is essentially when the DNA doesn't work properly. So that can be due to a variety of reasons, which is etiology, basically how it comes across. So that can be due to various external and internal factors. So which can be either genetically, if like it can be transmitted through your family, like maybe your parents, grandparents, or ancestors had it, and that could be one of the reasons. Or the second most common reason, and which is also preventable, are the lifestyle causes, which is being overweight, or having an unhealthy lifestyle with lack of physical activity. So that is the etiology of cancer.
Okay. I do just want to jump in there and just highlight something. You said weight can be a factor in this, and we actually had a conversation back in January during our Health at Every Size campaign that it was quite a controversial conversation when it came to weight and and body positivity. So I don't know if you're able to provide any insight into when we speak about weight having sort of a Sarah, you're tapping a bit there. I don't know if it's tapping quite loudly. Sorry. When we say that weight is sort of a risk factor in that, what is the link? I think that
essentially, I feel like so weight can be caused due to many, like being overweight or obesity can be caused due to various factors, and I feel like the major factor is not being healthy. So you can be overweight but still be healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I feel like that's one of the major factors. Like suppose if you consider colorectal cancer, it's caused because of problems with digestion.
Sorry, Projector. That's really tapping quite loudly, but scraping quite loudly.
I don't know what's wrong. Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, it's fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it can be caused because there's an irritant. Okay, so when you don't digest food properly, that time like there can be some irritation in your cells, which can cause like mutations in the genes. So I think it's more about being healthy and having like a good immunity rather than just the weight. So I think that's why like exercise and even 30 minutes of exercise per day, or like just eating healthier is beneficial. So doesn't
Yeah, I
really
mean,
have to be
we
a
do hear that
particular.
all the time. We do hear that all the time, and I think it brings sort of to my first question: why is this still a conversation? It feels like every health chat we talk about, it's like let's diet, let's eat healthy, let's exercise, and it just feels like the same information. And I feel like there are people who we know have been vegan, they've been vegetarian, they do all the quote unquote right things, and they still fall victim to things like cancer. And I sort of want to sort of maybe go across to Sarah and really ask, what do we know, about what the links are between, this whole thing of eating healthily and exercising, if we're still falling victim to cancer? It doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, there's no easy answer because if there were, we'd probably have a cure for cancer already. But it's really interesting how the way our genes work and the way our genes come together from both parents, that we can end up with millions of different combinations of genes, of how genes are expressed, how which genes turn on, which genes turn off. Sometimes the risk factor of a particular gene mutating is at chance. It occurs by chance, and you may have individuals whose mother had a particular gene, but or had a particular cancer or other condition, and they don't end up getting it, or vice versa. And so sometimes it really comes down to that chance of when all of those millions of combinations happen, when our DNA is replicating, meaning multiplying, and our cells are dividing. It just happens by chance what combinations are going to take place to result in the development of certain conditions, or whether certain things are suppressed. So,
Mm, you know,
so that's why again, because right now we don't necessarily have the technology to prevent all of those possible millions of different mutations that could happen. That's why the health community tends to talk more about what's called modifiable risk factors, because well, yes, there's a lot going on with stem cells and things like that, but we haven't perfectly figured out that component. So we tend to focus on, okay, the things that we can affect are, well, we know that, as Prajakta just said, there might be increased inflammation due to certain foods, that maybe if we minimize those things, we can prevent or minimize the risk of certain long-term factors happening down the road. There's things like that. So there's no guarantee, and there's definitely no one cause or answer for a person, but it's putting all of those things together.
yeah, we actually have a question here from someone who's saying,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of affects hormones. Do they cause cancers? And I'm going to probably go across the projector for this one. Just the link between hormones, and we're going to go into that a bit later on as well, particularly with hormone replacement therapies. So hormones and cancers, like what is the link here, and what do we need to know about that? Projector.
Yeah. As Sarah said, like cancer is mostly, you cannot pinpoint like a particular origin. It's more like of risk factors that can increase your chances of getting it. So yeah, hormones do increase the chances of getting certain cancers, especially because hormonal imbalances can cause metabolic syndromes, and they can also like cause changes in cells. So suppose like for ovarian cancer, increased hormones they can cause increase in ovulation, and the more ovulation takes place as the person ages, the more chances of them getting the cancer. So it's
Mm,
essentially like a chance that you may get cancer due to hormonal imbalances. But
mm,
I feel like, certain contraceptive pills do reduce your risk of cancer because they are a combination of hormones, so they reduce your risk of cancer.
So you're saying contraception, so you've just linked contraception into cancer as well, and that is definitely a conversation that people have been having. But we know that it's very common for people to be on contraception. We're actually encouraging people to know their rights, and within reproductive health, and to really take charge of their sexual and reproductive health. Are you now saying that that is a risk? Is that an additional barrier for us?
No, that's not a risk. That reduces your risk.
Oh, one more time, sorry.
That reduces your risk. Um, can you hear me?
Sorry, no, yeah, one more time. There's a little voice in the background that keeps drowning you out. Sorry, just one more time.
It reduces the risk of cancer, contraceptive pills. Like, it's not like it slightly reduces the risk, so it is beneficial.
Right.
Nothing can guarantee any reduction in risk, you know. It's like there's a lack of research, so it's really variable.
Right.
I have a question. I have a question for you, and it's kind of interesting. And look, we could have a whole other live just on that, of course. But it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because I know that, you know, contraception also has, you know, its concerns as far as the amount of exposure that a person has to those hormones over an extended period of time. You know, when you talk about going into menopause and things like that, like the longer the time period that the person is exposed to those hormones, you know, there's also that risk. So I don't know, I hear it both ways.
Yeah, so the thing is that if the contraception is only estrogen, then it
Okay.
increases the risk. But the combined contraceptives that has estrogen and progesterone, they reduce the risk. It's a good
Okay.
comparison.
All right.
Yeah, so
Good
it's
to know.
really about getting that balance right as well. So having a conversation with your GP about when the balance isn't right, having too
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
much progesterone,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, you might have to try a couple of times to get it right, particularly when
Mm-hmm.
risk is associated with that. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to just jump into the next question here, which is, you know, has cancer always been a problem? You know, I've come across information that says that there is a 1 in 2 chance of one of us, you know, of contracting cancer, and that can be really scary. I remember seeing a report at the end of last year. It was Cancer Awareness Month, and it came on the telly, and I thought to myself, okay, as I look over my partner and I'm like, so it's going to be me or it's going to be you, you know, and that is scary, you know, to think it's 1 in 2 people. Has this always been a problem? You know, if you go back 100, 200 years, has cancer always been a part of just, you know, what's happened to people?
I think there are so many factors that result in cancer, first of all, and there have always been factors before as well that could have caused cancer. But I feel like before, like if you say like a century ago, there were we didn't really have the technology to really detect it, and
Mm,
I think that is one of the major reasons. But because of the lifestyle changes and increase in life expectancy in general, we have been able to detect cancerous processes more, and especially like people are smoking more, there's a lot of pollution, and I think that has caused a higher prevalence of cancer, especially like it also depends that how much we count. I feel in these cases it's like we note more cases of cancer because they get diagnosed
mm.
first. So I think that's one of the most important factors. And but I read a report that said that after 2006, the incidence of prostate cancer actually decreased a bit because of increase in screening. So it really helps.
And that's a really good segue, screening, which is what we mentioned in our post. And I've actually gone ahead and printed out some of our posts from this past week just to refer back to them to ensure that those don't go to waste. And there's actually a list of myths that I believe were listed there, including things like electronic devices, being exposed to things like using plastic bottles and containers, artificial sweeteners, stress is one, genes, certain types of cosmetics like talcum powders. You know, can we, you know, are these myths? Are these actually myths? You know, is there something that we've been worrying about for years and years and it doesn't actually exist?
So actually, this was a really interesting piece of information that I came across when I was, researching this topic more. So Cancer Research UK has actually, they have some research projects that explain that the risk is so minimal that it was almost a coincidence that these things were linked to cancer. So uh, there's actually no proper evidence that plastic containers or electronic devices actually cause enough risk to cause mutations in our DNA. So
Mm.
that's one of the most
And that's really important. That's really important. It might be true, but because the number is so small, then, you know, we need to really keep it in context. Yeah, so that's a really important thing to keep in mind as well. Particularly when we have a lack of information within our communities, we sometimes rely on a quick Google, and so we come across a long list of things that are the problem, and we start to think, well, goodness, is that going to be me? And it can be quite scary. So I'm just going to pop across to Sarah now and just sort of ask just about barriers that affect cancer screening. I know that you do a lot of work with diabetes in the community, and sort of looking at the wider determinants of health, the other ways, the other morbidities, as we say, or other sicknesses that some of your clients present with. I'm just wondering what some of the barriers might be that might be the same as cancer screening. So, does that sort of come, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, well, I just want to touch on one thing before I answer that question. Another thing that might be reassuring to people that people may not be aware of is I've heard it said that we all have cancer within us, in the sense that we all, like, our body is always, sometimes there are hiccups as the DNA replicates, and then the body comes in and attacks it and says, oh, you're not supposed to, you don't need to grow anymore, and wipes it away. And that's a very simplified version of saying our body has checks and balances. And so, when you use those numbers, that 1 and 2, like, yes, we all may have cancer within us, in the sense that we all may have faulty cells sometimes, but it's about whether it's going to develop into something or continue going. Are those checks and balances in place to stop it in its tracks and say, oh no, you need to go away, and that, so that the body can wipe it out. And that's kind of where, like, the whole preventive piece comes in. So of course I had to put my little public health plug in there. but to answer your question, talking about barriers, especially if you are talking about prevention, well, if we say, okay, well, go eat healthy, go exercise, and people don't have the resources or the means to do that, they don't have safe neighborhoods in which to get that exercise, or specifically when it comes to screening access, if people don't, number one, know what the symptoms are, they may not seek out that help. If they feel unsafe or feel like they can't trust their GP, they may not go and get that screening. If perhaps we as families or communities may not have discussed these things in the past, oh, all I know is that my grandfather passed away at 50 and I don't know why, or whatever it is, as we talk about these more, then people can say, well, this is something that I need to go and have checked as well. And then it depends on the service access in your area. If there's a long wait, you may delay going, or if it's inconvenient for you, if it requires you to take time off work in order to go, that's income lost in order to go. If you feel like you present your symptoms, which does happen to a lot of people, especially when it comes to issues regarding the reproductive organs. Sometimes it can be a variety of things. And if you don't find a GP or a specialist who can recognize those symptoms, take it seriously and say, yes, let me progress your case to someone who can, do that screening, do that testing, then sometimes it can take years. You all probably have known or heard of stories where it might take months or even years for someone to get diagnosed with the correct thing, because it may be pushed to the side. It may, because, for example, with ovarian cancer, some of the symptoms might include IBS or irritable bowel syndrome type feelings, like an upset stomach type thing, issues going to the bathroom, that incontinence type thing, having that urge to go, or feeling full. Those things might apply to a variety of things, and they may get misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed or diagnosed late. So those are some of the barriers that come to my mind, not just for ovarian cancer, but for others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when we think about things like endometriosis, I mean, the average for someone to receive a diagnosis can range anywhere between 7 and 13 years, and that's scary, because that can also has risk factors around cervical cancers and other related things. So we know that prostate cancer on its own is quite a slow, sort of a slow disease. It takes its time. There's a bit of inflammation in the prostate. You might have increased levels of what's called PSA, so they sort of indicate that something might be a bit wrong with your prostate, and then it sort of can affect other surrounding organs, as it can move from sort of its first position to another position in the body, and that's really what takes people out. So it takes me on to the current initiatives that we have around prostate sort of cancer, like Prostate Cancer UK. We also have, of course, Cancer Research UK. We also have ovarian. I think it's called Ovarian Cancer Research UK. I forget what the name of it is.
There's Cancer Research UK, and then there's also the Ovarian Cancer Action organization. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That people can go to, and actually they've been quite good, I think, at using sort of more inclusive language that. Mm-hmm. That okay, I know we obsess around men, women, the binary of who can have or who can't have things, but the title of today's sort of event is really "If You Have It, Screen It," and it just wipes out all the barriers around identity and how people might wait to be accessed or addressed, and really just thinks. Actually, it makes us think, actually, if you have it, just see how you can get that screened. I know there's a bit of information that we came across in our research this past week that when people are undergoing sort of hormone replacement therapies, that actually the risk is decreased. I think that's something that people might be surprised to know. Prajakta, did you want to elaborate a bit on why prostate cancer in trans women, for example, that the risk is actually greatly decreased? Greatly decreased without saying much more than that?
Yeah, essentially it's because like the testosterone levels are reduced. That's why the prostate cancer risk is decreased, because it doesn't testosterone is essentially the hormone that is responsible for prostate cancer to develop in old age. So that's why it is reduced. However, sometimes I read that it can go undetected sometimes. So we still need to screen, even though the risk is reduced. It is essential to be screened because of the HRTs, it can be detected later.
Absolutely. And I know that there were some testimonies actually on the website where people have said, actually, I happen to have gone through gender affirmation surgery, but I was never actually told what stayed and what went. And that might have been several years ago. And I think that there might be a misconception that maybe the prostate is removed during that surgery. And we know that that is not removed. Did you want to elaborate on why it's not removed and sort of the awareness factors that affect people's sort of health outcomes?
So the prostate is actually wrapped around the urethra, which is just below the bladder. So if it is removed, there are chances that the urethra can be damaged. So it can cause more complications than necessary. That is why it's not removed.
Right. So it's basically essentially like a ball of clay that's wrapped around a straw, and that straw is helping you to void or get rid of your urine. But of course, if you have any damage to that, that can then present complications later on after that's been removed. So the best thing is just to leave it intact and leave it in place. Right. But as a result, people think, oh, I don't need to be screened. Okay. But really, they should be aware that actually screening is still a big part of what comes after gender affirmation surgery. Yeah.
I was just going to add that likewise, because in the UK, individuals are invited to come for cancer screening, you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to be aware. A person has to be aware of that, because it may not be on their mind anymore that, oh, I still have. Of course, we're referring to ovaries. I still have ovaries, even if they have gone through a transition. So they may still have to be aware that those organs still need to be screened. So if they, for example, they may receive that invitation for screening, but may disregard that and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me anymore. But in reality, it actually does. So
scary. Yeah. So when it comes to, I want to sort of digress a bit, and you might not feel prepared for this question, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, and whoever wants to take it can take it. Is really around the issue of people who have not yet carried children, and that there's information that's available around those who have not gone through the childbearing process, and how they can be at greater risk for things like breast cancer or ovarian cancer. Can you elaborate a bit on that, maybe Prajakta?
Yeah. So essentially, the thing is that these cancers are caused because ovarian cancer is caused because of constant ovulation, because the woman
Right.
has their cycle and then the membrane is disturbed, so it just causes irritation. So once you start getting older, it just the chances of the cancer developing are higher. But what happens is that during pregnancy, there is simply a break in ovulation for that long. So that's why there's like less time, like there is like a break in the ovulation cycle. So it's irritated less. That's why the risk reduces when you have more children.
Interesting. That's really interesting. you know, I,
Mm-hmm.
they asked that question. So just to recap on what you said, essentially, there's an ovulation process, the process of a body creating an egg, and when someone becomes pregnant, during that period of time that they're pregnant, whether with one child or many children, there is that sort of almost like a respite, like a bit of rest of that cycle, and so as a result, it slows or prevents. There's less likelihood of cancer developing because due to the aging of that system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, just want to double check. Okay, so just navigating a bit back to I think I saw a comment here actually a bit earlier on, unless I'm already addressed. I think we spoke about mutated genes. What can we be doing to make a difference? So obviously we speak about cancer all the time. We know that we have conversations about exercise and diet and risk factors and all this stuff is happening. What am I supposed to be doing? So I'm currently in my 34th year of life. Don't tell anyone. But I'm in my 34th year of life. I know that there is information available that says that sort of prostate cancer screenings will start at maybe 40. So when someone arrives at the age of 40, they can start to have prostate exams, is what's recommended. What can I be doing? What should I be doing? What can someone of my age or older or younger than me, what should I be doing?
Basically, just looking for symptoms that could indicate that you have anything that is abnormal. You should be open about it with your GP and consult them and maybe ask them about the risk. So basically, you need to have open lines of communication with your doctor. Also, get yourself screened as per the recommendations and follow the lifestyle changes as much as you can.
Mm. And I know that I would be doing us a disservice this evening if I was not pointing out the barriers of accessing GPs during this time. I know that it's quite typical in some places, or even prior to COVID, that you could just pop down to your GP or just bring them up and just try and get an appointment. And really, I'm not sure that that's still the same. We know that we have to dial 111. We have to sort of maybe ring in, to the GP surgery and find out if we are allowed to come in. And that does scare me a tiny bit. When it comes to if I feel like I have something I want to get checked out, do I want to put myself at risk to go into the GP and actually have that conversation? When it comes to that, what would we sort of recommend that we could be doing instead to ensure that we're being proactive but not putting ourselves at risk?
Well, to be honest, the only thing you can do is get screened, and talking to your GP and getting screened, because that's the only way we can diagnose it and do something about it. So that's the.
But with that, I don't want people to feel hopeless. I do know that, obviously, because the risk factors, people as they age are sort of at higher risk, particularly with prostate cancer. I know that with ovarian cancer, it can happen quite young, and so that's a bit of a different situation. But with prostate cancer, it's more likely to happen in 40 plus individuals, although there have been those who've been diagnosed at a younger age. It's just good to keep that in context, I believe. So yes. I just want to.
And even and I would add, if you have the option to set up a virtual telehealth session, then do that. Now, of course, there's nothing like being able to have the GP look at you, palpate, detect anything visibly or with, by being able to actually examine you in person. But if there is an option for a virtual visit, then that would at least give you the opportunity to talk through your symptoms with them and get some guidance from them until you can actually, or until you feel comfortable going in.
Absolutely, yes. I wanted to extend some questions to the audience. I know that some people have already sort of weighed in earlier on and sort of asked questions and made comments, but I do want to extend this this opportunity to anyone who is attending tonight's session. If they have any specific questions or general questions about tonight's topic, there's lots of information available on the post that we did this past week, which is great. You can take your time and read through it, but there might be something that you have in mind that has not been addressed in those posts, and I just want to sort of extend that to you at this time. That if you want to just drop your comment or your question in the chat, then we'll be able to pick that up for you. And while we're waiting on people to comment or ask questions, we do know that I don't know if we were able to include, I believe we did, but I can't find it, the actual case studies that we highlighted in our post this past week. I think one of the case studies, if I can remember correctly, I don't seem to have it in front of me, was really around someone getting their advice from someone who'd also gone through gender affirmation surgery, who essentially, by word of mouth, said that they didn't need to undergo any type of screening. Within the sort of LGBTQ plus Black and people of color community, this queer community of color, I think that we can be quite self-reliant on those that we are surrounded with. We can maybe ask people rather than going to our GPs. Without stating the obvious, what are some ways that we can avoid misinformation, ensure that we have the right education, feel more empowered to make decisions that are really important, and of course make sure that we're accessing the correct service rather than just what's available.
I would definitely encourage, I would encourage, first of all, I would encourage people to make sure you go to a reputable source. The internet is all bad, but you have to know where to go on the internet to find information. Start with your government agencies and then look at the websites that those government agencies recommend as well. Of course, the NHS also spotlights organizations like Cancer Research UK, where you can find out information about screening, risk factors, and also treatment options for a variety of different cancers, including prostate and ovarian. So I would always start there.
Agreed, definitely. And I'll add to that as well. I think when we talk about evidence-based research, which is what we like to do at Black Beta Health, we like to ensure that we have the facts and the figures, and then we go and try and make recommendations and facilitate important conversations. Academic research is not perfect as well. There is sometimes we have to be really careful of what we find and what we read, because it doesn't always take into consideration all of the lived experience or all the variants or all the different groups. A lot of times, if you read into who's actually participated in that study, you find that people may not be representative of your own community. And so you're actually following recommendations that are not pertinent or not related or relevant to your own communities. And that can be quite dangerous, particularly around screenings. When it's time to do things, what are people reporting and saying? What are the symptoms that they've experienced? We have a little comment here from Rachel actually saying, awesome presentation. Thanks for using your platform to provide knowledge and bring awareness. And that's all we can do. I think if we just continue to have important conversations, that is certainly half the battle. So thank you, Rachel. So Sarah, you made a comment about how broad the internet is. I've also made a comment from an academic perspective to say that all academic research is not good research, and so we have to really ensure that we can find multiple sources that are saying sort of the same thing, and of course speaking to a GP and having an important conversation around what should be done, and particularly tapping into their knowledge, and sometimes tapping into several different GPs, because I know we have a local GP and that's the only person we speak to, but we know that it's not a perfect process. We need to sort of be comfortable with asking around and getting them some different opinions.
And of course, on the note of it not being a perfect process, science does expand, and the recommendations may change as more information has come out, which everyone knows now in this age of COVID. It's become much more publicized, the fact that science is a progression of thought, as we get more information. So, keep things in balance, and as has been said already, look at those, look at the experts, go by what they are saying, but also be in touch with what you are feeling, with what you have learned from your family history, if you have access to that information as well.
So I had a little battery blip, but I did hear what you said. My phone's going to low power mode. So, so we're talking about 45 minutes, which I think is more than enough of discussion around this topic. And we can always encourage people to go back and watch the conversation. We actually had a bit of an issue with Zoom this evening, and so we quickly migrated across to IG this evening. And I think it's been to the benefit of those who've attended, as we saw that many more people were able to engage here. And we just want to take the time and thank everyone for attending this session today. I hope it was informative. I hope it was worth your time. I do just want to bring your attention back again to our new health guide that's been released, which is all about chronic illnesses and conditions. And actually, Sarah actually led on the development of that guide. And so I'm sure that she's very proud to take us through that. That can be available. You can access that either on our website at www.blackbeetlehealth.co.uk, or you can just click in the bio on our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or Facebook. It's all the same Linktree link. And you can access that guide there and have a little read. It's a digital guide. It's available for free download, so please do tap in. I think it's quite a good guide, and I would definitely recommend you have a look just for an overview of some of the conditions that maybe you haven't thought about recently. We've also just updated our website, so that website I gave you, www.blackbeetlehealth.co.uk. Beetle is spelled with double E's. Thank you. Not the Beatles, the band, the Beetle. Okay, so at beetlehealth.co.uk, and you can see some of the new features that are available on the website as well, with regards to signposting, finding services, and just reading more about the work that we do. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope that you'll join us next month for our campaign as well. And until next time, I'll see you on the internet. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.